We are getting new reports about a chilling and downright shocking escalation of ICE tactics against the residents of Chicago. In the middle of the night, hundreds of armed federal agents and police, backed up by riot trucks, smoke grenades, and helicopters, breached fences and busted doors in an immigration raid on an entire apartment building on the city's south side. They pulled dozens of residents from their homes and zip ties, including children, some of them without any clothes. They then held some outside for hours and dragged the others into rented vans.
It was scary because I've never had a gun put in my face.
Neighbors like Ebony Watson says they ducked for cover as they heard several flashbangs go off.
They was terrified. The kids was crying. People were screaming. They looked very distraught. I was out there crying when I seen the little girl come around the corner because they was bringing the kids out too. Had them zip tied to each other. One of them literally laughed. He was standing right here. He said, them kids.
They zip tied the kids together. ICE put out a statement saying they were pursuing Tren de Aragua gang members. But U.S. citizens living in the building say they were detained too. The cops told them that if they had any unrelated warrants, they wouldn't be going back home. 37 people were ultimately arrested after agents separated children from their parents on the street. And if you're looking at this and asking yourself, how is this legal? That is the right question to ask. And it has kind of an answer. And to understand it, you have to go back to Los Angeles this summer, where federal immigration agents started pushing the envelope on orders from the White House. They raided Home Depot parking lots and Walmart lots, and they grabbed people they saw. Near one Home Depot, masked agents with batons grabbed Narcisco Barranco, who has lived in the U.S. for more than 30 years and has 3 sons serving in the Marine Corps. Agents beat Barranco on the ground, dislocating his shoulder before detaining him. In Van Nuys, agents raided a car wash, remembering this, sending patrons and workers scrambling before the 79-year-old owner, who is a U.S. citizen named Rafi, tried to ask them what they were doing.
That is when Rafi was taken down by agents and eventually handcuffed. Rafi says he was injured in the process.
And they sit on me. This is my elbow about a week ago. And this is my arm.
Rafi says he and 5 others at his car wash were taken to a federal detention center downtown. We're still working to learn more about why they were detained.
And that man is not alone.
Look how you got my hand twisting that. I'm American, bro. Yo, these guys are literally based off of skin color. My homie was born here just because of the way he looks.
Agents kept stopping people they suspected of being undocumented immigrants for no reason other than they weren't obviously white. Like Brian Gavidia, the man you saw there, the 29-year-old American. He wasn't arrested, but he says agents went through his phone for 20 minutes and kept his real ID card. Now, these are obvious violations of people's core constitutional civil rights, their right to equal protection and the freedom from unlawful searches and seizures. And victims filed a class action lawsuit. And after an entire bench trial, a federal judge sided with those victims and ended the ICE sweeps. And in her ruling, she wrote, "It is illegal to conduct roving patrols which identify people based upon race alone, aggressively question them, and then detain them without a warrant, without their consent, and without reasonable suspicion that they are with status." Yes, it is. Yes, it is. An appeals court upheld her injunction against ICE. You have to stop doing this. And so the Trump administration took the issue to the Supreme Court. And lo and behold, last month, the court's 6-3 conservative majority voted to just let Trump and ICE continue for now, as the case works its way up, to use racial profiling in their immigration raids, halting the lower court's decision, saying, go ahead. Now, they gave no reasoning or explanation for their decision, silent, except Justice Kavanaugh, who wrote a short concurring opinion saying there's absolutely no problem whatsoever with racially motivated stops by law enforcement. Quote, "If the officers learn the individual they stopped is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the U.S., they promptly let the individual go." Welcome to the era of what critics call the Kavanaugh Stop. Carte blanche for ICE to continue violent, warrantless raids and stops all over the country to undocumented immigrants, lawful residents, and American citizens alike. Like Leonardo Garcia Venegas. You see him there, being cuffed roughly by ICE agents on a construction site where he was working. Vargas showed the agents his real ID as proof of citizenship, and they told him he was lying. And it took hours to get him out of custody, so not exactly expeditious. And then, get this, 2 weeks later, ICE arrested him again at another work site. He's now suing the government. The consequence of all this is what we're seeing now in the dead of night in Chicago. Dozens of federal agents raiding an entire apartment building with kids in it just to see what they can find. It's the most egregious abuse of our basic rights as Americans I've seen in a long time, maybe my lifetime.
For Republicans, the current trajectory raises concern.
Posted a hype video of another violent ICE raid with helicopters and grenades, this time on a house in the Chicago suburbs. And guess what? 2 U.S. citizens were mistakenly arrested. You know, there's a reason the American founders put the right to be free from unlawful searches and seizures in the Bill of Rights from the start. Masked secret police profiling people and now targeting entire apartment buildings, making everyone prove they're not guilty of something, is the province of tyrants. It is the opposite of American. And I don't think Americans will.
Chicago, in a pre-dawn operation that evoked images of authoritarian crackdowns, hundreds of armed immigration and customs enforcement, ICE agents, backed by riot trucks, smoke grenades, and helicopters, stormed an apartment building on Chicago's South Side on October 2nd, detaining dozens of residents, including children zip-tied and stripped of clothing, in a chaotic sweep targeting alleged Tren de Aragua gang members. Witnesses described scenes of terror as agents breached fences and battered doors, dragging families into the street and rented vans. "It was scary. I've never had a gun put in my face," said resident Ebony Watson, who ducked amid flash bangs and screams. "The kids were crying. People were screaming." By dawn, 37 individuals were arrested, with children separated from parents and held outside for hours in the chill. ICE's statement claimed the raid focused on Venezuelan gang operatives, but U.S. citizens among the detainees recounted indiscriminate sweeps. Agents threatened release only if no unrelated warrant surfaced. One mother, her toddler in diapers, was handcuffed alongside neighbors. The operation, part of a surge in aggressive enforcement, left the community reeling, with advocates decrying it as a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment's protections against unreasonable searches and seizures. This Chicago assault traces its roots to summer raids in Los Angeles, where ICE agents, emboldened by White House directives, targeted Home Depot and Walmart parking lots, detaining workers based on appearance alone. Narcisco Barranco, a 30-year U.S. resident with 3 sons in the Marines, was beaten and shoulder dislocated during one sweep. At a car wash, 79-year-old U.S. citizen owner Rafi was tackled and cuffed for questioning the masked intruders. Brian Gavidia, a 29-year-old American, had his phone rifled for 20 minutes despite showing his real ID. "These guys are literally based off skin color," Gavidia said, his U.S.-born friend similarly profiled. Victims filed a class-action lawsuit, alleging racial profiling and warrantless detentions. U.S. District Judge Dolly G. ruled in their favor, enjoining the sweeps as illegal. "It is illegal to conduct roving patrols which identify people based upon race alone, aggressively question them and detain them without a warrant, without their consent, and without reasonable suspicion." The Ninth Circuit upheld it. But last month, the Supreme Court's 6-3 conservative majority stayed the ruling, allowing ICE to resume. Justice Kavanaugh concurred, if officers learn the individual is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the U.S., they promptly let the individual go. Critics dubbed it the Kavanaugh Stop, greenlighting racial bias. The consequences are stark. Leonardo Garcia Venegas, a U.S. citizen cuffed at a construction site despite flashing his real ID, endured hours in custody, then rearrested 2 weeks later at another job. He's suing. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem hyped a similar Chicago suburb raid with helicopters and grenades. 2 U.S. citizens were mistakenly detained. "Welcome to the era of the Kavanaugh Stop," said one advocate, as masked agents now scour sites, forcing all to prove citizenship. The founders enshrined the Fourth Amendment first for a reason, to shield against tyrants wielding secret police. Trump's tactics, demanding IRS, Social Security, and voter data for criminal investigations, extend the abuse, with states like Pennsylvania resisting. Chicago's midnight terror, separating families in zip ties, isn't isolated, it's policy. As Noem's hype video glorifies the violence, communities brace. "If this is legal, what protects anyone?" one resident asked. With midterms weeks away, the raids test democracy's guardrails, turning everyday Americans into suspects in their own homes. The right question remains, how far will the Supreme Court silence let this go?